DC Comics is rebooting Batman, written by Matt Fraction with art by Jorge Jiménez, and I'm really excited for it. The story starts with Jim Gordon back as a cop after retiring and working as a private investigator during the Joker solo series. He's now partnered with a new officer, Espinosa. While they're having coffee, Killer Croc suddenly shows up, wrecks a meat truck, and then takes off. At first, Espinosa is like, "We need to do something. We have to act," Espinosa says. But Jim Gordon replies, "Calm down. In Gotham, the first rule is always call for backup." Then the scene shifts to Batman, who looks incredible. His focus here is on Killer Croc, and he's told, "We're as shocked as you, Batman." Waylon Jones self-reported for treatment and could have left any time he wished. This containment unit was built to withstand a bomb blast. And that's kind of the funny thing, is the response of Batman is, "You're new here, Doctor. Killer Croc has not been Waylon Jones for a long time. I try to keep them separate." In my mind, it's easier that way when they inevitably disappoint you. Here we see a clash of ideas. On one side, there's a doctor with a more modern and compassionate view. On the other, there's Batman, who thinks, he's a criminal, we just have to stop him. But Batman also finds it easier to separate Waylon Jones, the man, from Killer Croc, the monster. It's a more cynical way of thinking, and you'll see what I mean when she says, "Waylon may be a supervillain to you, but he's a patient to me." Waylon Jones is changing Batman. He's shedding his skin, but it continued deeper, as though he were shedding everything inside and out. And this is the more cynical take of Batman, right? His response, "People never change." Not really. That line is going to be pretty controversial for Batman fans. Why? Because one of Batman's core traits is that he believes people can be redeemed. If he didn't, he wouldn't keep sending criminals to Arkham Asylum, hoping they could be cured. He'd just lock them up for good or even kill them. So this idea goes against what many fans see as the classic Batman belief in redemption. That's why she responds, "Tell that to Waylon, right? He's been exposed to unknown metamorphotoxins with unpredictable results. He's regressing, gentle, almost childlike. But then he does something like this, right?" And that's where Batman says, "But then your mutating, man-killing monster baby wanted to go out and play." But she responds. She says, "He may be capable of great violence, but he's capable of great tenderness too. Curiosity, even wonder, but right now he's afraid. And fear prevents us from having a say in how our minds respond to the chaos of trauma. But it requires trust, care, and time." This is where their ideas clash. You could say she's almost excusing bad behavior, but really, she's trying to see both sides. Yes, he's a villain and does bad things, but not everything he does is pure evil. She compares him to a child, someone who doesn't fully understand the difference between right and wrong. That's why Batman replies by saying, "Time is the one thing that we're out of, Dr. Zeller. Have you already called the cops?" And she's like, "I may be new Batman, but I'm not stupid." And so Batman's response, of course, is like, when the time comes, stall. Like, just don't tell them everything. Do enough to basically keep them at bay. Now we switch over to Vandal Savage, who is the current commissioner of Gotham City. For anyone new to the Batman comics, Vandal Savage has held this position since the Dark Prisons storyline. Back then, Jim Gordon stepped down and became a private detective. After that, Renee Montoya took over as commissioner for a while, but eventually she was removed and Vandal Savage stepped into the role. Savage is not exactly friendly toward Batman, which makes sense since he's usually seen as a Justice League villain. Now, I wouldn't say he's always using the Gotham Police Department just to go after Batman, but he definitely doesn't give Batman the freedom and cooperation he had when Jim Gordon was in charge. Back then, Batman worked closely with the GCPD and had connections on the inside. But under Vandal Savage, the Gotham police are completely off limits to Batman. No resources, no inside help, nothing. Something important to keep in mind is that Savage is using his role as commissioner for his own hidden goals. It's not really about gaining control over Gotham City the way other villains might want to. Savage has been alive for over 50,000 years. So ruling a single city isn't exactly his main ambition. Still, he is twisting the power of the police force to serve his darker purposes. That's why he created the Tactical Urban Combat Officers, basically a paramilitary unit designed to enforce his will. He basically tells the cops, They're here to assist you in your peacekeeping duties. But as usually the case when someone nefarious brings in a paramilitary force, it's really more to contain and control. And then the time will come when cops just won't have their roles anymore, and they'll be taken over by all the tactical urban combat officers. So that's really the issue here. Right now, it's not a big enough deal to be the main focus of the story, but it's Matt Fraction doing what writers like him usually do. Guys like Jonathan Hickman and Brian Michael Bendis set up smaller storylines that will grow and connect to bigger stories later on. From there, the scene switches back to Batman and Alfred Pennyworth. And here's the shocking part. Alfred Pennyworth is back, and I'll let you guys figure out how that works. But the fact is, he's back. What makes it even more interesting is that Alfred still has his usual sarcastic attitude. As Alfred usually is, right? Rather moody and silent this evening, Master Bruce. Where I wonder are we going? And that's where Batman's just like playing a hunch. So Batman and Alfred do talk a little about what the doctor said, whether or not people can really change. But it's not a long conversation, just a quick exchange. Then the police radios go off, and there's an incident happening at the park. Batman heads over to Robinson Park, and this is where you see just how brutal Matt Fraction's new version of Batman really is. He speeds in with the Batmobile and literally runs over the criminals. These guys were harassing young girls, and Batman doesn't hold back. After hitting them, he jumps out and just beats them down hard. Now, depending on how you look at it, maybe that's still traditional Batman. But here it feels a lot more violent and intense than usual. And so that's why he tells the girls, these creeps have decided that Robinson Park is their hunting ground. The police don't think it merits concern, but I disagree. And he says, sorry I couldn't get to you sooner, but you both need trauma and medical care. And then ultimately, he just kind of leaves them. Now he leaves his car there in order to basically make sure that they're safe. But one of the things that he realizes is attached to this girl is a butterfly. And at that point, he's like, okay, this thing's pretty far from home. It's not native to here, meaning they got it from somewhere else. They were running from a location. I need to follow that location back. And it's kind of Batman just following clues. What's interesting here is that nothing really points directly to Killer Croc at first, but Batman follows his gut feeling anyway. And sure enough, it's clear Croc has been there. The dome on top of the building is ripped open. Cars in the parking lot are smashed. Classic signs of Killer Croc. And the surprising part, Alfred is there again too, and he says, oh dear, what a mess. And Batman talks to him, he's like, Killer Croc is here. Trail of blood spatter leads from here to the exhibit hall, so it has to be Croc. Batman goes inside the place and finds a security guard and a few civilians. What's crazy is that Killer Croc is just sitting there, staring at butterflies. The same kind Batman saw earlier, so the connection is clear. At first, the security guard is ready to shoot at Croc. And Batman's like, that's a really bad idea because number one, bullets won't work. And number two, all you're going to do is piss him off. And then we get this cool bit of a modification, kind of an upgrade of sorts. He says, contact Dr. Zeller at Arkham Towers, do not call the police. And so with the security guard is like, what are you going to do? The response of Batman, strike a little terror into his heart. These clues are enough for someone to understand how they fit into the bigger situation, if you know what I mean. So, just like Batman guessed, Killer Croc suddenly charges at him, exactly the way you'd expect Croc to act. And that's why he's like, let's get this over with. But Killer Croc kind of dismisses him. And again, kind of speaking in broken English, he says, you bad, so go. And that's where Alfred chimes in, and he says, Master Bruce, what if this Dr. Zeller is correct? Some creatures do in fact change. What if some eternal cycle has begun within him again, even if only for this moment? And he's become something like a child alone in a violent, terrible world he cannot understand, drowning in fear. If it's as you say, and no one ever really changes, Master Bruce, then surely you know how that feels. It's a very straightforward point. Bruce, you were that child once. You were that little boy crying after your parents were shot in an alley. So at the very least, you should be able to understand that. And this is something I really like about Matt Fraction's writing. He shows both sides of Batman. For all the darkness and brutality we've seen so far, Batman also has a softer side. Instead of just saying to Alfred, forget it, let's just beat this guy up and drag him back to Arkham, He shows more care. He actually sits down with him and just talks to him, and he says, Waylon, I used to have one of these in my house, right? This great big huge Tyrannosaurus Rex. And that's where Waylon is just like, big house. And Bruce is like, yeah, it was a pretty big house. And that's where Waylon is just like, you head new now. And Bruce is like, I mean, if you say so. And the response of Croc, me head new, but bad now. Lost. And he's like, I ate the zoo. And Batman's response is everything. He's like, I know you did, buddy. I know. And I love this side of Batman. But he says him head like me up there. And that's where Batman's like, how so? Do you mean like a king? And the response of Croc, no. Mean bad, scary, hungry, can't think, head bad, maybe I'm bad. And that's where the good doctor shows up again. And she shows up with like a little Tyrannosaurus. She's like, you know, I'm here to help. Do you want me to help? Would you like to come home? And when she presents him with this little Tyrannosaurus, Killer Croc is excited. He looks so ecstatic over getting his toy back. And that's kind of the funny thing. It's because she says, you made a bad choice, Waylon. Now you can make a good choice. Come home. Let me help you. And his response, okay. And he says, home now, she help. And he asks Batman, who helped you? And the response of Batman is like, my head's okay, Waylon. I don't need help. And he says like, if you say so. Because as you guys have probably figured out by now, Alfred's not actually there. That's the crazy thing, because at that point, he actually gets the little toy from Killer Croc. Killer Croc gives it to him, and Batman just puts it in a display case with so many other things. And at that moment, he's hit up by Robin, and he's just like, so do you have any ears on you? And Batman's like, always, Robin. Like it's an emergency line. And that's where Batman's asked, is there anybody on the police force that we're friendly with these days? And the response of Batman like, I don't like the sound of that. And he's like, wow, why? And the reason why is because Robin's in an alley being told by the cops to put his hands in the air. This dude is on the verge of being under arrest. Alright guys, we're going to wrap things up here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.